Anyway, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Larry Brock is calling out Minister Boissonnault for his lies and fraud, and he's responding to Joni Wilson-Raybould, and she says, "I guess when some people look in the mirror, they see what they want to see." And Randy Boissonnault says, "It's become apparent that my former business partner, Stephen Anderson, has conducted himself in an unacceptable manner. It was all him, not me. See the bus? All right, former business partner, you're going under it," right? Like Larry Boissonnault is throwing his former business partner under the bus. Joni Wilson-Raybould saying, "You see what you want to see, buddy. Like this is on you, actually. It's not on your former business partner." And Larry Brock says, "Liberal Minister Boissonnault is nothing more than a fraud. He needs to resign." And yeah, there's that sentiment is flying around. People are not happy with the corruption at the top of the liberal power structure. And Minister Boissonnault represents a lot of that, right? Amy Ham writes an opinion piece in the National Post. She says Randy Boissonnault is an embarrassment and should resign. His shifting indigenous heritage is only part of the story. And so there's also, he claims indigenous heritage because his adopted family is indigenous, I guess. So there you go. That's what it is. But anyway, regardless of all that, there are people circling, right? Sharks in the water, they smell blood. And really the corruption, if there were people in the comments who were saying if he was a conservative minister, he would have, or shadow minister, if this was a conservative person, this person would have already been run out of office. But because it's a liberal, it seems like it's okay. So that's weird, right? Like that's a little bit strange. Double standards abound. And same thing happens in the United States, right? The Democrats can do anything they want, including appointing men dressed as women for roles in like national health, things like that. And that's fine, right? But when Donald Trump wants to appoint a veteran and Harvard graduate, et cetera, they lose their mind because he's also a Fox News host. So, I mean, it's incredible, but these are the days we live in. Philip says, moving on, let's talk about the elections in Canada. Things are shaping up, isn't the right word, but everybody's moving their pieces and making moves that they're going to have to run on. And the Liberals seem hell-bent on taxing Canadians more. So Philip, and he's an MP, he says, "It's cold in my garage, so I've got my hands under my legs." Philip is an MP for Northumberland, Peterborough South, and he's the shadow minister for transport. He says, "The radical liberal environment minister wants to impose a global tax on our citizens. The new carbon tax will increase the cost of everything being shipped. That's higher prices for Canadians while our money goes off to foreign countries. Common sense conservatives are calling for Trudeau's radical environment minister to testify immediately." So here's part of the letter. This is November 13 from Peter S. He says, "Dear Chair, yesterday at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP29, the Environment Minister, Gelbo, pledged the Liberal government's support for a new global carbon tax on shipping to raise money to send to other countries. According to the Association of Canadian Port Authorities, Canada's ports are responsible for $17 billion of economic output. The marine sector is responsible for 353,760 Canadian jobs. A new tax on maritime transportation would undoubtedly drive investment and business away from our already struggling port system, putting good-paying union jobs at risk. Additionally, a tax on shipping is a tax on the goods that are being shipped. At a time when 2 million people are using food banks every month, Canadians can't afford another failed Liberal tax grab." So I would agree with that. I think that there's no point in raising taxes. It harms us, and raising taxes on shipping goods here, that's not what a government is supposed to do. Like they're not supposed to find new and inventive ways to tax us. They're supposed to find efficiencies and give us the windfalls. They're supposed to invest in something like the oil fields or LNG. And when all of that money starts coming in, they're supposed to reduce the taxes, not increase the taxes. But instead, our government insists on taxing absolutely everything, not just the gas on shipping, but the shipping itself now. No. We need to actually crush shipping. And then they'll tell you, those CEOs, those greedy CEOs, how dare those greedy CEOs want to make money, right? Like, it's incredible, but the people who end up having to pay more is the end consumer, is the person who goes to buy the laptop, and the laptop is $100 more because, oh, shucks darn, the shipping costs now, right? I was at Walmart yesterday and I saw, the advent calendars, and I did see ones. They used to have the ones that had the little tiny disc of chocolate. Like, you know what I'm talking about. It's a very small little disc of chocolate for $1, right? They used to be $1. And realistically, a chocolate bar is $1. An advent calendar doesn't need to be $5. But I saw those same ones with the little skiff of chocolate for $4.98. And I was like, what the heck? Inflation's not that bad. And I just think they're hosing us now, right? Like, sure, bananas are 59 cents, but like a chocolate bar is $10, right? Like it's insane. And no, I haven't seen chocolate bars that are $10, but dairy milk bars used to be $4 and now they're kind of inching up to $5, but then on sale often for $4. So I haven't paid the increased price yet, but still sometimes you have to buy two to get it for that price. I digress. Okay, moving on. Derek Sloan is highlighting the problems I was highlighting the other day. And my problem was the sloganizing. After Trump comes out and says nobody can change their gender, we need to get these sick people out of our hospitals. Bravo. Not 16-year-olds can start the transition and parents will be notified. Not 18-year-olds can be mutilated by the medical association or the medical system that taxpayers pay for. None of that stuff. He's saying, listen, this is insane. And doctors who engage in this stuff and hospitals that engage in this stuff will lose their funding. Like, that's a real leader, okay? The sloganization of it all, and I'm casting shade at Danielle Smith there, and also Pierre Poilievre to a degree. The sloganization, axe the tax, bring it home, rah, rah, rah. Have you noticed the full-blown invasion of the country, sir? Like, it's insane what's going on. And the liberals are saying, oh, we're going to, tinker with immigration here and there and so on and so forth. Again, have you noticed the full-blown invasion of the country, right? Have you noticed the doubling of the rents? And I know that Poilievre talks about the rents doubling, but then he says we're going to build homes. And I mean, there are other ways to skin that cat, if you will. Anyway, the sloganizing sounds weak and thin. It doesn't sound like, yeah, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. It sounds like, holy cow, how come you can't speak plainly about what you're going to do? Because Trump seems to be able to, right? And so here's Derek Sloan, and he says Canadian conservatives are looking pretty pathetic right now. On the United States side, Donald Trump says he will dismantle the deep state, destroy corruption, cut $2 trillion worth of government spending, end the war in Ukraine, avert World War III, dismantle Big Pharma. He might be overselling it. Deport illegal immigrants. He is saying all of these things. End chronic disease. Yep. Bring prayer back to schools and bring manufacturing back to America. And on the Canadian side, we've got axe the carbon tax. Bring it home. So I should get a wah-wah. Like I'm going to go download a wah-wah because I need one. So there's that, right? Imagine that was a wah-wah noise, because we are failing when it comes to the rhetoric game at this point in time, in my opinion. Here's Jagmeet Singh, and he is saying, let's get rid of GST. I like that idea. Let's get rid of the GST. We should restore the GST to a farmer's party. We should restore the NDP to a farmer's party, because they used to be like under it wasn't long ago that the NDP was a party that was focused on rural kind of concerns, ABC kind of bread and butter kitchen table concerns, not the communism that we're seeing from Jagmeet Singh, right? And so how hard would it be to restore the NDP to a sane non-communist party, right? And is that a better vehicle than trying to start your own party in like Ontario or something like that? Because at this point in time, my firm belief is that if you said to yourself, I think that what Donald Trump is saying, the rhetoric of Donald Trump, that resonates with me. And I'll be honest with you, it resonates with me. Okay. It does. All of those things, do that as fast as possible. The government accountability and cutting trillions of dollars from government spending. Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely. Do all of those things. There's no vehicle that I can get into to drive me to that location. Nobody is using that plain language. Nobody's being that plain. Is Bernier being that plain? Somewhat to a degree, but even his immigration plan cuts down to 100,000. Why? Complete economic implosion. All of those people coming in are buying houses, buying cars, and they're what is keeping our economy afloat at this point in time. And Bernier probably understands that. So there's elements of that. So could you draw it down further than 100,000? I haven't looked at the I haven't looked at the hard economics of it, and I'm not a money guy. I would have to ask my friends to look at it and tell me, like, what am I looking for? What are the patterns? What do I need to understand here? So regardless of all of that, though, the rhetoric is weak, and we are in a situation where I like this idea for cutting the GST. We should cut the GST. There are other vehicles to tax other places And like ultimately, sometimes that ends up in the consumer's pocket. But I think that having a direct tax on all goods is bad. It's a bad idea, right? Like it's the same as taxing energy. It's the same as taxing carbon. So it's funny that he wants to get rid of the GST, but he doesn't want to talk about that carbon tax that doesn't work, right? Here's Jagmeet Singh.
You work hard to build a good life for yourself and your family. I believe it's our responsibility to make that a little easier, like taking the tax off of everyday essentials and monthly bills. That means lower cell phone, internet, and home heating bills. That means you pay less for diapers, children's clothing, and grab-and-go food at the grocery store. No government should nickel and dime you on the basics. You can count on me and the NDP to always put people first. You work hard to build a good life for yourself and your family.
Always put people first, except when talking about the carbon tax. Just let's not talk about that. I don't think he'll say anything about the global shipping tax that Gelbo wants to sign us up for, or already did sign us up for, right? But he wants to cut that GST. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, oh, we'll just move the GST over here. Eric says Eric is also an MP, I think, a Conservative member of Parliament, and he loves cardigans. And he says secret NDP and Elections Canada meetings are absolutely normal, according to Dominic LeBlanc. Trudeau gave NDP special access to Elections Canada and the Prime Minister's office to rewrite election laws with a $42 million pension guarantee for dozens of their soon-to-be defeated MPs. Yet another NDP sellout that keeps Justin Trudeau in power. So there you go. Here is part of that.
We found information here that on January 25th, that there was NDP headquarters representatives that got a meeting with the Prime Minister's office, staff from your office in Elections Canada to get information and briefings behind the scenes, only revealed afterwards. Do you think it's appropriate that the NDP, not just MPs, on two different occasions, NDP party headquarters staff got access to the Prime Minister's office and to Elections Canada to get briefings that were not offered to any other party? I don't think Canadians find that very funny, and it was secret until we asked for details.
Again, you're a very experienced sleuth here, Mr. Duncan. I would congratulate you for that investigative work. This is absolutely normal. So do I think it's appropriate? Absolutely.
We found information here.
So he's not being, he didn't actually think it was good investigative work. He didn't actually think like this guy was doing a good job sleuthing or anything like that. He was being facetious. I'm not sure if you could tell, but I want to be very plain about it. He was being an a-hole, right? And so it's one of those things where instead of answering the question, instead of talking about maybe explaining why it's normal, et cetera, but that would have been better than the facetious jerk of an answer that he gave. But fundamentally, if there's a agreement between the NDP and the Liberals where the NDP are acting as members of the Liberals, having meetings like that, is that normal? Should the Conservatives be cut out of meetings talking about extending the time frame of an election, specifically in order to get these pensions? Shouldn't the Conservatives be allowed in? Or is this just something that a majority government decides on? Would a majority government be able to just decide on that? Probably, right? And so it's one of those things where it sounds really, I don't like it. I think that it's probably underhanded. I think it happened. I don't know if it happened before or after the truth or the agreement got ripped up, but it didn't really get ripped up, did it? So still, it seems underhanded and sneaky, and the motivation seems to be money, and it seems very, very gauche. It doesn't seem very good. Like, I don't like it at all. But is it above board? And what I mean by that is that how laws get made? Yeah, I think so. I think they have meetings and they talk about things and like, oh, we're going to do this, and there we go. Pierre Poilievre is talking about the failure of the cricket protein plant in London, and he says Liberals spent $9 million of your money on an edible bug factory. Now we get crickets from them about where the money went, signed to tell Trudeau to stop his weird, woke, wasteful spending. And National Post is reporting Trudeau's $9 million bet on edible crickets runs into trouble. The world's largest cricket factory, funded in large part by federal monies, entered extended retooling. So there you go. And I mean, it's probably going to be bankruptcy and like just it's going to go away. Fingers crossed, right? But yeah, wasted money and nobody being held accountable. And again, that's how things go too. Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of wasted money in Canada for things that fail. A whole bunch of solar plants, a whole bunch of clean energy, green energy initiatives have way more than $9 million put into it, and it fails. And then again, no accountability. All those people have money and they walk away. And a lot of them are just regular people who've gotten jobs in, whatever industry, thinking it's the next big thing. And the government funds run out, and then they start cutting back their staff, and then the whole thing collapses because the government funds are the only thing keeping it going. So it's not just that, and it's a huge waste of money, right? And again, makes its own case for government efficiency. Keith Wilson is responding to this. It's interesting. I want to talk about crime, and I want to talk about how Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, their powers that be, are going after them for 10 years in jail for their role in the Freedom Convoy, and people who rape teenagers. So a 56-year-old Canadian man who raped a teenager and bragged about it was sentenced to 3 years in prison. And so it's weird how I talk about often how the justice and the judicial aspect of our life is no longer rule of law, because rule of law means the law is equally enacted upon everybody. No matter if you're an 18-year-old or 18-year-old nobody or the prime minister, the law is enacted the same, right? But it's not anymore. And so if you dare to stand up to the government, you're going to get 10 years for mischief. But if you are a pro-Palestinian protester, you can do all the mischief you want and never face a day in jail or even arrest, right? You can rape people and get 3 years in jail, but if you stand up to the government, that's 10 years in jail, despite one being a violent crime and the other not being a violent crime. And so our justice system is cracked. It is corrupt to the point of uselessness. And so I don't know that rebuilding it is viable. Like, can you rebuild something like that? Or do you have to scrap it all and start over? Because at this point in time, the Supreme Court has expressed their bias on COVID vaccines, and I don't know how they could be impartial, but there are some things that need to be decided in a court or in something with authority like that. And with that bias that's plain, I don't know how you can ask. I don't know how you can expect to be treated fairly from a court with such bias, right? And it's just like, how do you deal with that? So Keith says, is responding to the 56-year-old rapist getting 3 years. And Keith says the Crown is seeking a 10-year sentence against Tamara Lich and Chris Barber for mischief charges from the 2022 Freedom Convoy protest. I think they were thinking that Trump wasn't going to get in. When Kamala Harris won, they were going to put Chris Barber and Tamara Lich in jail for 10 years and say, yeah, they deserved it. And walk away just like they were January 6ers, just like they were the Coots guys, and so on and so on and so on. And now that Trump's in, I don't know why that changes the math, but it seems like it's changed the math. There's been a whole bunch of court things that have abandoned their charges despite keeping them going for up to 2 years. Now they've disbanded them very recently, right after Trump's win or right around Trump's win. So I don't know why it changes the math, but it seems like it's changed the math, and something to pay attention to, something that I noticed. I don't know why. So that's weird, right? It's something to think about. Let's talk about the grab bag of governance, everyone's favorite segment. Pierre Poilievre says, disgraceful. A high school principal tried to justify playing protest songs at a Remembrance Day ceremony, demeaning and devaluing the service of women and men who died defending our country's freedom. He should be fired now. This is slippery. Here, he doesn't talk about Arabic or anything like that. It's now a protest song. Weird, right? Isn't that weird? Isn't that dodging the whole offensive part of it? No? Parents shocked after Palestinian protest song. This is the language used by the Toronto Sun. Protest song used in school Remembrance Day service. The song Haza Salim became a popular anthem among anti-Israel activists after last year's Hamas terror attacks. So, and the principal said, Remembrance Day is, what was his quote? He was basically saying a whole bunch of white guys in military outfits, basically, and denigrating Canada's Western culture for what? To kowtow to Islamicists? Or anyway, it's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. And it's fully encouraged by school boards. It's fully encouraged. There are a whole bunch of people who are encouraging this. And I mean, there's now a fight about it, but that's kind of a wizard circle in and of itself, right? Getting people onto one side or the other and then arguing about it. Is it right or is it not? If you had a homogenous society that all fundamentally kind of believed the same thing, you wouldn't have problems like this. So we did this to ourselves and we should undo it. We should fix that problem. Robert Fife says Ottawa advised against releasing the names of alleged Nazi war criminals over concerns for Ukraine. So Spencer Fernando didn't want to hear about the Nazi units in Ukraine. And, you know, we got to Slava Ukraini real hard. So if we release the names of the alleged Nazi war criminals, that's gonna go over like a lead balloon with Canadians, right, who are uninformed about the Nazi presence in Ukraine. So that's interesting. I mean, medium interesting. It's just, I'd like to stop all funding for all foreign wars, including Ukraine. And if they want to negotiate peace, well, we've got a table to sit around, right? They can come to Toronto and we'll negotiate peace. But if they want to fire weapons at each other, we're not the right people for that. Anyway, here's the Epoch Times, and they're talking about traveling to the United States. Canadians to pre-submit digital photo driver's license for border crossings in 2026, according to a federal report. So is Trump going to bring in digital ID and biometrics for Canadians crossing the American border? That's going to be super fun. Canadians driving into the United States will be asked to pre-submit photos and license plate numbers to the Canadian Border Service Agency starting in 2026, according to a federal report. Upcoming requirements will fall under the agency's ongoing Traveler Modernization Initiative. I mean, listening to Trump's incoming border czar talking about the number of terrorists crossing the border from Canada from the north, I wouldn't be surprised. And he'd probably, if I was in his shoes, I would say, why aren't we doing at least that? Like, why? What? Not necessarily a digital thing. Like, and it doesn't say necessarily it does say digital tools, but it says you have to pre-submit photos and license plate numbers. So like a photo is biometrics. So it's sticky. It's sticky. I would want it if I was them. I want it for Canada, right? Like, prove who you are. I want to make sure that you're the right person, right? I guess your passport has your photo on it, right? Is that too much? Is that a bridge too far? So long as you can do it via email, would it be okay? The upcoming requirements will fall under the agency's ongoing Traveler Modernization Initiative, a program aimed at expediting border processing through the use of digital tools. As part of the program, Canadians will need to provide their biographic, biometric declaration, and other border-related information prior to arriving at the port of entry, says government report, which was first covered by BlackRock's reporter. Travelers will use a redesigned advanced declaration mobile application. Oh, there it is, ArriveCAN, to submit their digital photo, advanced declaration, and license plate information in advance of arrival. Border officers will be provided with smartphones to access and process digital referrals, the report said. A comparable electronic filing system will be rolled out to marine passengers in 27 and to air passengers in 28, the report said. So welcome to digital ID land, right? So this is digital ID to gain access to the United States. Is this Trump rolling this out? It seems like it's like he's not in office yet. He doesn't have time to be rolling this out. Somebody's rolling this out before him. Is this going to stay? We'll see, I guess. So that'll be fun. Very interesting there, don't you think? The Globe and Mail says Ontario signs a $100 million deal with Elon Musk's Starlink system. The federal government was caught flat-footed, so Donald Trump called up Elon Musk, and not Donald Trump, Doug Ford called Elon Musk and made a deal, $100 million. Is that a good deal? I don't know. How many people is that? $100 million divided by 3,000 people? I don't know. Maybe they could have just bought a Starlink each directly for these people and saved some money. But anyway, $100 million with Elon Musk's Starlink. So that's good. I like people in rural Ontario being able to access Starlink, but I think they could access Starlink up until now before this, right? So, I mean, maybe it's subsidized to make it cost the same as like I would pay, and that's great. I would pay in a city, you know what I mean? Like I pay a less amount than somebody who needs to access Starlink. If you have Starlink, and they're rolling out subsidies, can you access those subsidies? Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful